Initial contact. Sergeant Marcus Drake stood at attention before Admiral Reeves in the stark briefing room of Earth's orbital defense station. The Admiral's weathered face bore the kind of expression that usually preceded an unpleasant assignment. "At ease, Sergeant," Reeves said, sliding a holographic display across the table. "I have a special mission for you." Marcus relaxed his stance but kept his face neutral. Special missions had a way of turning his life upside down. The hologram showed a striking alien female with iridescent purple skin and silver hair that seemed to float like starlight. "This is Princess Nyara of the Solarian Empire," Reeves explained. "She's been causing diplomatic incidents in the outer colonies. Your job is to escort her back to the Solarian homeworld." Marcus fought the urge to groan. "With all due respect, sir, I'm a combat specialist, not a babysitter." "Which is exactly why you were chosen." Reeves leaned forward. "The princess has already evaded 3 escort teams. We need someone who can handle both combat situations and a difficult charge. Besides, the Solarian specifically requested a human escort this time." "Any particular reason why, sir?" "They believe humans are too stubborn to give up." Reeves smiled wryly. "Prove them right." 2 days later, Marcus found himself in the grimy spaceport of New Singapore, scanning the crowds for his target. The princess had last been seen in this sector, frequenting the less reputable establishments that dotted the station's lower levels. The throbbing bass from a nearby club caught his attention. Through the holographic advertisements and neon signs, he spotted a flash of purple skin and silver hair. Princess Nyara was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by a mix of humans and aliens who hung on her every word. Marcus approached quietly, noting the 2 concealed energy weapons under her ornate jacket. This princess was no helpless royal. As he drew closer, he caught fragments of her conversation. She was regaling her audience with tales of her latest escape from her previous escorts. "The Centaurian actually believed I was going to the restroom," she laughed, her voice musical but with an edge of steel. "I was halfway to the next system before they realized I'd slipped out through the maintenance shaft." "Impressive," Marcus interrupted, causing heads to turn. "But I'm afraid playtime's over, Your Highness." Nyara's silver eyes locked onto him, narrowing dangerously. "Human," she said, the word dripping with disdain. "I suppose you're my latest keeper." "Sergeant Marcus Drake, at your service." He gave a slight bow, never taking his eyes off her hands near those hidden weapons. "And yes, I'll be escorting you home. Don't waste your time." She turned back to her companions. "I'll be gone before we reach the first jump gate." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's what the others thought too. "Shall we do this the easy way, or do I need to demonstrate why humans have a reputation for being irritatingly persistent?" The princess's entourage tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But before anyone could act, the club's lights flickered and died. Emergency strips cast everything in a red glow as screams erupted from the dance floor. Marcus's combat instincts kicked in as he spotted armed figures moving through the crowd. "Down," he shouted, tackling Nyara as energy bolts scorched the wall behind them. "Unhand me, you primitive," her protest cut off as another blast nearly took her head off. "Those aren't your average bounty hunters," Marcus growled, drawing his pulse pistol. "Professional hit squad. Still want to argue about leaving?" Nyara's silver eyes widened as she recognized the attacker's insignias. Shadowmark assassins. But who would? She stopped, a flash of understanding crossing her face. "Questions later," Marcus said, returning fire as they crawled behind an overturned table. "My ship's in Bay 12. Think you can keep up?" The princess retrieved one of her hidden weapons, a sleek neural disruptor. "Try to keep up yourself, human." What followed was a fighting retreat through the station's winding corridors. Marcus had to admit, the princess knew how to handle herself in combat. They moved in surprising synchronization, covering each other's blind spots as they fought their way through waves of assassins. You're not terrible at this, Nyara admitted as they finally reached the docking bay, both breathing hard. High praise indeed, Marcus replied, slapping the entry code into his ship's airlock. Now get inside before. A massive explosion rocked the station, sending them stumbling. Through the bay's viewport, Marcus saw other ships erupting into flames. They're targeting all potential escape vessels, Nyara said grimly. Not mine. Marcus grinned as they raced aboard. Latest in human stealth tech. They won't even see us leave. As Marcus powered up the engines, he caught Nyara studying him with an unreadable expression. You're different from the others, she said finally. I'll take that as a compliment. He engaged the stealth systems as more explosions lit up the station behind them. But don't get too comfortable. This is still a mission, not a pleasure cruise. We'll see. Nyara settled into the co-pilot's seat, a hint of amusement in her voice. You humans do have a habit of surprising people. As they slipped away from the chaos of New Singapore, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would hold plenty of surprises for them both. The princess was clearly more than she appeared, and those assassins meant someone wanted her dead rather than just delayed. One thing was certain, this wouldn't be the simple escort mission Admiral Reeves had promised. But as Marcus glanced at his unusual passenger, who was now expertly analyzing their pursuit vectors, he realized he might not mind the complications quite as much as he should. The real question was, who wanted the princess dead, and what secrets was she hiding behind those silver eyes? Storm and strife. 3 days into their journey, Marcus knew something was wrong with his ship. The engine harmonics were slightly off, and the navigation system had been glitching intermittently. As he ran another diagnostic, Princess Nyara watched from her position in the co-pilot's seat, her silver eyes tracking his every move. Your vessel seems troubled, she observed, her tone carefully neutral. Marcus grunted as he analyzed the readouts. Someone tampered with it during the chaos at New Singapore. Probably the same people trying to kill you. He shot her a pointed look. Care to tell me who they are? Nyara's iridescent purple skin shimmed slightly. What Marcus had learned was a sign of agitation among Solarians. If I knew for certain, I would have dealt with them already. A warning klaxon cut off Marcus's reply. The ship lurched violently, sending loose items clattering across the deck. Red warning lights flooded the cockpit. Main drives failing, Marcus announced, his fingers flying over the controls. We're going to have to set down for repairs. He checked their position. There's a planet in range. Barely. Nyara leaned forward, studying the planetary data. Novice 624. Technically habitable, but... She trailed off as she read further. But what? It's a death world. Extreme weather, aggressive fauna, toxic vegetation. The perfect place for someone to arrange an accident. Marcus managed a grim smile. Better than dying in space. He wrestled with the controls as they entered the atmosphere, fighting against winds that threatened to tear the ship apart. Might want to strap in. This landing's going to be rough. The ship screamed through layers of storm clouds, lightning crackling around them as they descended. Marcus used every trick he'd learned in combat drops to keep them airborne, but the failing engines gave out just before touchdown. They hit hard, skidding across rocky terrain before coming to rest at the edge of a dense alien forest. When the dust settled, Marcus ran a quick systems check. Life support's holding, but that's about it. Main power's dead, and half our equipment is fried. Nyara unstrapped herself, moving with the fluid grace that seemed effortless to her species. Then we should salvage what we can before night falls. The storms are worse after dark. They worked in efficient silence, gathering supplies and survival gear. Marcus noticed that the princess handled military equipment with practiced ease, further confirming his suspicions about her background. This was no pampered royal. As they finished securing their makeshift camp inside a nearby cave, the first drops of acid rain began to fall. The droplets sizzled where they hit the ground, releasing faint wisps of toxic vapor. "Cozy," Marcus commented, setting up a portable force field to protect their shelter. "Now, Your Highness, I think it's time we had a real conversation about what's going on." Nyara was quiet for a long moment, watching the storm intensify outside. Finally, she turned to face him. "What makes you think I trust you enough for that?" "Because someone sabotaged my ship, trying to kill us both. Because those weren't random assassins back at the station, they were after you specifically. And because right now, I'm the only ally you've got on this nightmare of a planet." A flash of lightning illuminated her face, casting sharp shadows across her alien features. "You humans," she said softly, "always so direct. So persistent." She sat down across from him, her silver hair catching the light from their emergency lamps. "What do you know about Solarian politics?" "Only what's in the briefing files. Your people are technically advanced, highly structured society. Big on tradition, bigger on genetic purity. Which is why it's interesting that their princess seems to have combat training." Nyara's lips curved in a bitter smile. "I'm not just their princess. I'm their perfect specimen, the culmination of centuries of genetic engineering. Designed to be the next evolution of our species." Her expression hardened. "But some believe I'm an abomination. That we've gone too far in our pursuit of perfection." "The traditionalists," Marcus guessed. "They're the ones trying to kill you?" "Among others. There are those who want to use me as a weapon, those who want to study me, and those who simply want me dead. My adventures in human space weren't just rebellion. I was gathering information, making connections." Marcus leaned back, processing this new information. "And now someone's made their move. But why request a human escort?" "Because your people are predictably unpredictable. The one factor my enemies couldn't easily account for." She studied him with those unnerving silver eyes. "And because humans have a remarkable talent for surviving impossible situations." A distant roar echoed through the cave, followed by the sound of heavy movement in the forest. Marcus checked his weapons, noting that Nyara did the same. "Speaking of surviving," he said, "we should probably worry about the local wildlife before we tackle galactic conspiracies." "Agreed." Nyara moved to a defensive position, her movements smooth and practiced. "Though I'm curious, Sergeant Drake, now that you know the truth, will you still try to deliver me to those who might want me dead?" Marcus chambered a round in his pulse rifle, considering her question. "Let's focus on staying alive first. Then we can figure out what's right." Another roar, closer this time. Marcus could see massive shapes moving through the toxic forest, drawn by their presence. The acid rain intensified, creating a caustic curtain between them and whatever horrors this planet harbored. As they prepared for what promised to be a long night, Marcus couldn't help but appreciate the irony. He'd wanted a real mission instead of babysitting duty. Now he was trapped on a death world with a genetically engineered princess, surrounded by monsters, and caught in the middle of an alien political conspiracy. Sometimes, he reflected, you should be careful what you wish for. Hidden agendas. Dawn broke over Novice 624, though dawn was a generous term for the slight lessening of darkness through the perpetual storm clouds. Marcus and Nyara had survived the night, though not without cost. The cave floor was littered with spent energy cells from their weapons, and deep claw marks scored the rocks where something massive had tried to reach them. The force field won't last another day, Marcus said, checking their remaining power cells. We need to get back to the ship, see what we can salvage. Nyara nodded, wrapping a protective cloak around her shoulders. Her purple skin was dulled with fatigue, but her silver eyes remained sharp. The ship's computer might still be functional. If we can access it, I can prove what I've been saying about the conspiracy. They made their way through the toxic forest, every step calculated. The vegetation itself was hostile, thorny vines that tried to ensnare them, spores that could eat through protective gear, flowers that released hallucinogenic toxins. But it was the silence that put Marcus on edge. The predators from last night had withdrawn, but he could feel them watching. "Your combat training," he said as they walked, keeping his voice low. "That wasn't part of your genetic engineering, was it?" "No." Nyara ducked under a low-hanging branch that dripped caustic sap. "That came from my mother. She believed that true strength comes from experience, not laboratories. The traditionalists hated her for it." Past tense. "She disappeared 3 cycles ago." Official story was a diplomatic mission gone wrong. Nyara's voice was carefully controlled. "I found evidence suggesting otherwise." They reached the ship, which looked even worse in daylight. The hull was pitted from the acid rain, and scorch marks from their rough landing scarred the outer plating. Marcus kept watch while Nyara accessed an external panel, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision. "The main computer's intact," she announced. "But someone installed a remote kill switch in the engine system. Very sophisticated. Very illegal." Marcus scanned the Trilene, pulse rifle ready. "Can you trace it?" "Already did." Her silver eyes narrowed at the data scrolling across her portable display. "It has a Solarian military signature, but it's been altered. Disguised to look like the work of traditionalist faction." "But you don't believe that." "The traditionalists are many things, but they're not subtle. This." She gestured at the sabotage. "This is the work of the Evolutionary Council. They're the ones who oversaw my creation, who push for further genetic advancement of our species." Her voice turned bitter. "They must have decided I'm more valuable as a martyr than a living symbol." A warning chirp from Marcus's motion sensor interrupted them. "We've got company." Multiple signatures, closing fast. They retreated into the ship's airlock, sealing the door just as massive shapes emerged from the forest. Through the viewport, Marcus saw creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of bear and reptile, with multiple rows of teeth and armor-plated scales. "Apex predators," Nyara said, her voice tight. "They hunt in packs, use basic tactics. Rather like your Earth wolves, but with a taste for metal as well as flesh." As if to prove her point, one of the creatures began tearing at the ship's hull, its claws leaving deep grooves in the reinforced plating. "The good news," she continued, working frantically at a console, "is that I've found something interesting in the ship's logs. Before the sabotage activated, we received a coded transmission. It's heavily encrypted, but I recognize the pattern. It's from my mother." Marcus divided his attention between the viewport and Nyara's work. "Your supposedly dead mother sent us a message. She's been in hiding, gathering evidence against the Council. The traditionalists might be vocal opponents, but the Council, they're the true monsters. They've been experimenting on our people for generations, creating enhanced soldiers, specialized workers, all under the guise of advancing our species. And you were supposed to be their crowning achievement. Until I started asking questions. Started investigating disappearances, unexplained accidents, genetic failures that were quietly disposed of." Her fingers flew over the keyboard. "Mother found proof of their atrocities, but she needed help getting it to the right people. That's why she arranged for a human escort. Because humans are unpredictable," Marcus remembered. "We don't play by their rules." A thunderous impact rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed as the creatures outside began coordinating their attacks, focusing on structural weak points. "How long to decrypt that message?" Marcus asked, checking their remaining ammunition. "Minutes. Maybe less." Nyara's voice was strained. "But we'll need a distraction to upload it to the emergency beacon. If we can broadcast the evidence on all frequencies, even the Council won't be able to cover it up." Marcus studied the surrounding terrain through the viewport, an idea forming. "Those flowers we passed, the ones with the hallucinogenic toxins. Would they work on our scaly friends out there?" A slow smile spread across Nyara's face. "You know, for a primitive species, you humans have remarkably devious minds. We prefer to call it tactical creativity. He began gathering supplies. I'll keep them busy. You get that message decoded. Nyara caught his arm as he turned to leave. Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his given name. Why are you helping me? This isn't your fight. He met her silver gaze. Maybe not. But I've seen enough to know what's right. Besides, he grinned, someone has to keep you alive long enough to cause some real trouble. As he prepared to face the monsters outside, Marcus reflected that this mission had become something far more important than a simple escort duty. It was about justice, truth, and standing against those who would use power to oppress others, human or alien. And if that meant fighting off genetic monstrosities on a death world while exposing a galactic conspiracy, well, that's just what humans did best. Breaking point. The plan worked better than Marcus expected, which immediately made him suspicious. The hallucinogenic toxins from the flowers had sent the predators into a frenzy, causing them to turn on each other in confusion. Meanwhile, Nyara had successfully decoded her mother's message and uploaded it to the emergency beacon. Now they just had to survive long enough for help to arrive. The broadcast is going out on all frequencies, Nyara reported, her silver eyes fixed on the ship's remaining functional displays. Even if the Council tries to block it, enough people will hear the truth. A proximity alarm blared through the ship's damaged systems. Marcus checked the sensors, his expression grim. We've got incoming. Multiple ships entering the atmosphere. Council vessels, Nyara confirmed, studying the signatures. They must have been tracking us, waiting to see if we survived the crash. She turned to Marcus, her purple skin pulsing with tension. They won't let us leave this planet alive. Not now. Marcus began checking his weapons with practiced efficiency. Then we better make sure we take some of them with us. Any chance your mother's message mentioned a backup plan? Actually. Nyara's fingers danced across the console, bringing up a hidden subroutine. She did. There's a reason we crashed on this specific planet. Look at these geological scans. The display showed a network of underground tunnels beneath their position, leading to what appeared to be an ancient structure. Marcus whistled low. Your people have been here before. An old research facility, abandoned during the early days of genetic experimentation. Mother discovered it while investigating the Council's secrets. It should have emergency transportation capabilities, assuming the power systems are still functional. The first Council ship touched down a kilometer from their position, its sleek design a stark contrast to the brutal landscape. Armed figures began emerging, their environmental suits bearing the distinctive markings of Council elite guards. Those tunnels are looking pretty good right now, Marcus said, gathering their remaining supplies. Any other surprises I should know about? Nyara hesitated, then reached into her pack and withdrew a small crystal cylinder. Insurance. From my mother. It contains a virus designed to target the genetic modifications in Council forces. Non-lethal, but it will temporarily neutralize their enhanced abilities. Making it a fair fight. Marcus grinned. I like your mother's style. They found the tunnel entrance hidden beneath a cluster of toxic vegetation, using the ship's remaining power to seal the entrance behind them. The passage descended sharply, leading them deeper into the planet's crust. Emergency lights flickered to life as they passed, responding to ancient motion sensors. The Council's ancestors did their worst work in places like this, Nyara explained as they moved through the facility. Experimenting on volunteers and prisoners alike, pushing the boundaries of genetic science without concern for ethics or consequences. And now their descendants want to continue that work, with you as their proof of concept. Exactly. If they can show that their methods produced a perfect specimen, they'll have justification to expand their program across our entire species. Her voice hardened. I won't let that happen. They reached a vast chamber filled with abandoned research equipment and stasis pods. Many of the pods were damaged or empty, but some still contained shadowy shapes that Marcus chose not to examine too closely. At the center of the chamber stood a massive device that could only be a teleportation platform. "Good news and bad news," Nyara announced after examining the controls. "The system still works, but powering it up will alert the Council to our location. We'll have company before the transport sequence completes." "How long?" 3 minutes to power up, 2 minutes to execute the sequence. After that, there's a brief window where the portal will remain stable enough for transport. Marcus checked their remaining ammunition and the crystal cylinder containing the virus. 5 minutes. "We can do that." As if on cue, explosions echoed through the tunnels above them. The Council forces had found their trail. Nyara began the power-up sequence while Marcus took up a defensive position, placing motion sensors at key points around the chamber. "You know," he said as they waited for the inevitable assault, "when this is over, you could always claim asylum on Earth. We're pretty good at dealing with people who don't play by the rules." Nyara looked up from the controls, surprise flickering across her alien features. "You'd vouch for me? Even after all the trouble I've caused? Especially after all the trouble you've caused. Besides," he smiled, "someone needs to show Earth what a perfect specimen looks like. Might keep us humans on our toes." Before she could respond, the motion sensors triggered. Council forces were pouring into the chamber, their enhanced soldiers moving with unnatural speed and precision. Marcus activated the virus dispenser, creating a subtle mist in the air that the Council troops' filters wouldn't catch. What followed was chaos. As the virus took effect, the Council's enhanced soldiers found themselves struggling with suddenly unreliable abilities. Their superior strength wavered, their enhanced reflexes became erratic. And in that moment of confusion, they discovered why humans were considered such dangerous opponents. Marcus fought with everything he had, using the chamber's equipment as cover while he picked off targets with precise shots. Nyara joined the battle, her natural combat skills proving more reliable than the Council's artificial enhancements. Together, they held the line as the teleporter hummed to life behind them. 30 seconds. Nyara called out, ducking under a plasma burst. Marcus tossed his last grenade, collapsing part of the tunnel to slow the enemy advance. "Go. I'll hold them off. Don't be stupid." She fired a precise shot that dropped an elite guard trying to flank them. "We leave together or not at all." The teleporter reached full power, its energy field stabilizing into a swirling portal. Through the chaos of battle, Marcus could see more Council forces arriving, including what looked like heavy weapons teams. "Time to go." He grabbed Nyara's arm, pulling her toward the portal as explosive rounds began tearing through the chamber. They dove through the energy field together just as the facility's ancient supports began to collapse. The last thing Marcus saw before the teleporter's energy engulfed them was the Council's precious research facility crumbling into the planet's depths, taking its dark secrets with it. New horizons. The teleporter's energy field dissipated, leaving Marcus and Nyara in a gleaming white chamber that stood in stark contrast to the crumbling facility they'd just fled. Marcus immediately raised his weapon, scanning for threats, but the room was empty save for one figure standing calmly before them. A Solarian woman with the same iridescent purple skin as Nyara, though marked with the subtle striations of age, smiled warmly. "Right on schedule. Mother." Nyara's voice cracked as she stepped forward. The two embraced while Marcus maintained his guard position, watching the chamber's entrances. "Ambassador Lyra," he said, recognizing her from diplomatic archives. "You've been busy." "Indeed." Lyra released her daughter, her expression turning serious. "And now, thanks to your broadcast from Novice 624, the entire Galactic Assembly knows what the Evolutionary Council has been doing. Their leadership is already being detained for questioning." Nyara's silver eyes widened. "The evidence got through? All of it? Every last bit?" Lyra's smile held a predatory edge. It seems humans aren't the only ones who appreciate a good rebellion against authority. Once the truth was out, many of our own people came forward with their stories. The Council's power base is crumbling as we speak. Multiple screens activated around the chamber, showing news feeds from across the galaxy. The Council's secret facilities were being raided, their leadership arrested, their victims finally finding justice. Years of careful planning and evidence gathering had paid off in a single, devastating exposure of their crimes. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, finally lowering his weapon as he recognized the Earth Embassy logo on one of the walls. "Diplomatic Sanctuary on Europa," Lyra explained. "One of the few places even the Council wouldn't dare attack directly. Which reminds me." She turned to face Marcus fully. "Sergeant Drake, how would you feel about a change in assignment?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am. The Solarian Empire is entering a period of significant change. The traditionalists are gaining influence, but they need to be balanced by progressive voices. We need people who understand both strength and compassion." She glanced meaningfully at her daughter. "And we could use someone with experience in human-Solarian relations." "Mother," Nyara interrupted, a faint purple flush coloring her cheeks. "Are you offering him a job?" "I'm offering him a position as Earth's first official military liaison to the Solarian Imperial Guard." Lyra's eyes twinkled. "Unless you object." Marcus looked at Nyara, seeing not the perfect specimen the Council had tried to create, but the remarkable person she'd chosen to become. "That depends on whether I'll be working with or for the princess." "With," Nyara said firmly, meeting his gaze. "Always with." "There will be opposition," Lyra warned. "Many still believe in genetic purity, in maintaining the old ways. Let them oppose." Nyara stepped closer to Marcus, her silver eyes challenging. "We've faced worse odds." "Besides," Marcus added with a grin, "someone needs to keep showing the galaxy what humans are capable of." "Might as well be me." Lyra nodded approvingly. The Council believed they could create perfection through science alone. They forgot that true strength comes from choice, from facing challenges and choosing to overcome them. Humanity has proven that again and again. "We're stubborn that way," Marcus agreed. In the days that followed, change swept through the Solarian Empire. The Council's fall from power created opportunities for reform, for bridging the gap between tradition and progress. It wasn't always smooth, change rarely is, but with each step forward, more people began to see the value in diversity, in allowing individuals to choose their own path. Marcus found himself at the center of it all, working alongside Nyara to build something new. Their unique partnership became a symbol of what was possible when different species worked together, when strength was measured not by genetic engineering but by character and determination. One evening, as they watched Europa's ice sheets shimmer under Jupiter's light, Nyara turned to Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever regret it? Getting involved in all this?" Marcus considered the question, remembering his initial reluctance to play bodyguard to a spoiled princess. "Not for a second. Though I do have one regret." "Oh. I never did get to complete my original mission. You know, delivering you safely home." Nyara laughed, the sound like music in the artificial atmosphere. "Perhaps you still can. Though your definition of home might need some adjustment." As he looked at her, Marcus realized that home had become less about a place and more about a person. Their journey had started with duty and defiance, but it had led them to something far more valuable, a partnership forged in adversity, strengthened by trust, and sustained by the kind of stubborn determination that humans were famous for. "Well," he said, taking her hand, "I am known for being persistent." "Yes," she agreed softly, her silver eyes shining with affection. "That's exactly why I chose you." Above them, Jupiter continued its eternal dance across Europa's sky, a reminder that in a universe full of wonders, sometimes the greatest discoveries were not the ones you were sent to find, but the ones that found you along the way. The Council had sought to create perfection through science. Instead, They had learned what humans had known all along, that true strength comes not from engineering, but from the heart's capacity to grow, to adapt, and to love despite all odds. And in the end, that was the most human truth of all.